I am Jay. Lisa's here too. We're going to split the talk in half. Um, I need to apologize because I woke up this morning starting to lose my voice. So I'm going to try and muddle through. But like Chloe here next to Lisa was going to be my backup option and just do the talk in my stead if I couldn't bring myself to do it. But I'm going to try for you all. Uh, so in your programs and on the website, this is the name of the talk, what it's really like to found and be hired by a tech for good startup. But to be honest, this is basically a placeholder title. When Kimberly put her call for speakers out, like we knew that we had a bunch of stuff that we wanted to say, and we thought that maybe you'd be the right audience for it, but we didn't really know what we wanted to say yet. So I would like to propose a new title for this talk, if I may. And this is it. Don't be alarmed. This title has a lot of meanings, and we will explore them over the course of the talk. So one of the things that title makes me think of is the myth of Sisyphus, right? Who knows this myth? Yeah, does anyone not know this myth? Yeah, a few. Okay, so Greek myth, Sisyphus used to be a tyrant, a king, used to kill guests to show off. Red wedding stuff, basically. And then the gods punished Sisyphus by cursing him to push a boulder up a hill for all eternity. And every time it got near the top, it would fall back down the hill again and he'd have to start again the next day. It might also remind some of you of the endless stairs in Super Mario 64. But anyway, let me get into the main body of the talk then. So a few years ago, I was at what I think of in my brain as a local maximum. Like my brain loves to think about things in terms of graphs and mathematical stuff. This is a concept from mathematics. Some of you might be familiar with this already if you've come from that background. I'd reached a peak, if you like. In my tech career, I was able to do things that I wouldn't have imagined being able to do 10 or even 5 years ago, like buy a house or like live a reasonably comfortable life in a city as expensive as London. The kinds of things that I imagine have brought a lot of us here to this room today to be able to do, right? But the thing is, once you've hit that local maximum, no matter what direction you start going in, you start to go downward again. So this is my local maximum. This is a company called FutureGov. They're not around anymore, but this was essentially my dream job. I worked for them for about 3 years. This is a picture that was taken shortly before I started. It was a company of about 80 people. They were an agency, so they worked with a bunch of clients. They did tech work, but they also did a whole bunch of design and research and all sorts of things that are adjacent to that. And they worked a lot with the public sector, which might sound boring to some people, but in fact, you're working on things like social care, housing, adoption, fostering, all sorts of really important things that we need to get into shape for the sake of the next few decades. Like you're probably all aware that there's a health and social care crisis at the moment in the UK. We were at the front end of trying to solve that crisis. So I got to blend working towards this social impact with using my favorite skills. This kept me happy for a really, really long time. But as always happens, eventually I got curious about what to do next. There is always a bigger mountain. The thing about a local maximum is that you never quite know whether you're at the biggest mountain or not. You only know that every direction you head from there seems to be taking you down the mountain again, which is a strange place emotionally to be in. So I played about with a few random jobs, nothing really stuck. Eventually I landed in a job with Chloe here, which was really bloody awful. I hated it. It was bad enough to convince both of us to quit. Essentially, the company did a round of redundancies that we felt were really horribly mishandled, and we quit basically in solidarity with all the people who'd lost their jobs. And that was kind of the kick that we both needed to stop pottering about at the top of this local maximum and start to find something completely different and out of the ordinary to do instead. So anyway, this is what we do now. This is Interrobang. We're a tech for good company. We do stuff like this. So sometimes we get to go on fun trips to places like Edinburgh. That's the Scottish government in the background there. Weirdly, that they're all literally in one big building together. So if you have a grievance with the Scottish government, you can just walk up to the Scottish government building, and like chances are the person that you want to talk to will be in that one building. It's not like in Westminster where they're spread out all over. No, that they all sleep in one big building together, which I thought was good. And then sometimes we just play about on our laptops all day. That's Chloe fiddling with a pull-up banner for our product on the right-hand side there. We're 16 months old and we have a full-time team of 4 people and a part-time team of 3 more people, so 7 of us in total, including Lisa here. But some of you will have noticed that I skipped a few steps there. So how did I go from losing out on that local maximum and attempting to tackle that much larger mountain? So embracing my inner clickbait author, I thought that I might give you 7 things they don't tell you about founding a tech for good startup. Number 1, every conversation that you're in when you have a company like this that you help run is now a 3-way conversation. It's you and the other person and the company. And when someone comes up to you with faces like this, which happens surprisingly frequently, there's a whole nother layer of social cues that you need to figure out. So you're like, well, do you want to be friends? Do you want to buy my company? Do you want me to give you work? Do you want to fuck us? Like, what's going on here? It's like a whole nother dimension of complexity that is added to every single conversation. And like, we've hit a stage now where people the word is starting to get out about what we're making. So we've started to entertain people who are interested in investing us. And some people have come up to us and been like, right, you need to look out for people who are going to want to acquire you, who are going to want to buy you. And it always starts with someone coming up to you with this face. And it's a big job to try and unpack exactly what they mean. Founder effects. Did anyone study biology, or does anyone currently study biology? Yeah, you may be familiar with this term already. So founder effects essentially means that early decisions matter a whole bunch, especially when it comes to hiring and building a team, right? This is a concept from biology. So when individuals found a new breeding population in a new place, certain traits can end up overrepresented or underrepresented in that new place. I specifically like this graph just because it says colonizers in the top right there, which I thought this goes for companies as well. Like, for example, a company that I used to work for, it was founded by a white man and a white lesbian, and then 10 years on, it was still basically 50% white men and white lesbians, you know? So it's like, if it's really easy to sleepwalk into what the demographic makeup of your team is going to be in these first few months and not realize that you've done it. And you need to fight really hard to make sure that you don't do that unintentionally. Operating in uncertainty is a must-have. This one isn't, like, everyone will tell you this about starting a company. There's no one to tell you when the task is done anymore. Chloe used this GIF a few weeks ago in a show and tell that we did to explain the confusion of doing a really important big task, but which was also quite open-ended. So the kind of task that could just go on and on and go on and on. These tasks are never ending if you let them be. And at the level that we're operating at now, every other task is one like this. No one is around to tell you when it's done well enough to stop for now. So you need to become really good at deciding that for yourself. Everyone is just some guy, you know, like the kind of work that we do is still, we sell a lot to big enterprises and big public sector organizations. So often we end up on video calls with people with job titles like the deputy director of digital, whatchamacallit, with like letters after their name. And it's really easy going into those calls, especially when you're new to it, as we are to an extent, and as you are, to be really intimidated by these people and think, oh my God, these people really know their stuff, and I'm just some guy. Like, why should they listen to me? But in fact, it's often the other way around. These people, especially in big enterprises in the public sector, they've got those jobs because it lets them relax a little bit and coast a little bit. And often that means that when your company is dependent on knowing your stuff, you know it to a far greater extent than they know it. And that really often comes across in these calls. So bearing in mind, like, everyone is just some guy, you know? Like, these are all lovely people, but I'm just using them to illustrate the point. Your big break will be something completely unexpected. Some of you might have come to codebar, where I gave an unprepared talk. That's a picture from it there. That's my little session. I think I recognize a few of you who are in this session here. And the product that is now our thing. We call it VouchSafe. It's a new way of proving who you are that uses your trusted relationships rather than paper documents. It hadn't happened yet. It wasn't a glint in our eyes at the time of that talk. So we had a feeling that we wanted to do this stuff, but it was like we hadn't imagined it yet. And that came out of nowhere. The funding application that put us on the path to where we are now, I did at 1 a.m. in my pajamas. Your skills are more diverse than you think. I teach design leadership courses as a side thing. Probably have to stop now because I literally don't have the time to keep doing them. But these are for people who are moving from like designer roles into management and leadership roles. And the thesis of the course is essentially the same iterative, user-centered, collaborative, evidence-driven process that you learn as a designer, and to a lesser extent as a developer, as someone writing software, is perfectly applicable to making strategies and go-to-market plans and all of that stuff that matters when you're building a business rather than just a product or just software. And it is important to never underestimate how quickly you become the experts. We're going to Identiverse. This is a conference in Las Vegas. This is like the big international conference for the sector that we're working in. Those are houses down there. You can't really see them with this contrast, but each one of those little things is a tower block. Absolutely enormous thing, right? Like, again, I think you wrote the application for this in your pajamas at 1 a.m., didn't you? And for some reason, people enjoyed that enough to invite us to go and talk at it. And now we've got people with job titles like deputy director of da 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 contacting us on LinkedIn and wanting to know our opinions on these things that back then we hadn't even started to think about yet. Never underestimate how quickly you can become the experts. And on that note, I think it's your turn.
So my name's Lisa. My pronouns are she, her. I'm 31. This is month 3 of me being a software developer for Interrobang, but also ever. I have been confused, overwhelmed, and my Instagram algorithm is now offering me an influx of software developer memes, which I'm actually not even mad about. They're really funny. I wanted to have a really nice package story to give you with a beginning, middle, and end. I thought the beginning could be where I was before the job, how I got the job. The middle could be the actual job itself, and then the end could be a sort of review of my findings. But I really struggled because it's just much more messier than that in actuality. I'm out of my depth, and I'm basically stumbling around in the dark and hoping I don't break anything. So where am I? This is why I'm sorry. So with that as a prefix, I will try and tell a story, but I'll keep it simple. And if you do have any questions, ask away. So I live in Bath. I've lived in Bath since I was 4. It's a really affluent area. This is a map of Bath and North East Somerset. This map is cheerfully named the map of deprivation. The blue is areas that are not deprived at all, and the red is areas that are very deprived. That little red bit there is called Twerton. That's where I live with my mum. Twerton is in the top 10 most deprived areas in the country. This time last year, I was on universal credit. I was working part-time at a bar. I was occasionally doing some creative freelance work or hosting and playing local poker games at the bar I was working at for extra cash. I'm mentioning this because it's quite significant. It plays quite a significant part in my integration with this role. I'm having a surprisingly difficult time adjusting mentally. From my life then to what it is now, it's technically the same life. I go to the same places, I see the same people, I have the same friends, and I still play poker with them. But I'm just more financially stable now, and I run away to London once a week. So it kind of feels like I'm living a bit of a double life. I don't know if that gets better or if the two integrate eventually. I'm still figuring that out. But what I will speak about with slightly more certainty is how I actually got the job, and how I came from the map of deprivation to here. That's what I was trying to do, is figure out how to pay for the cost of living. So we know that I worked in a bar part-time during the evenings. That's what I was trying to figure out what to do during the daytimes. I also mentioned that I was on universal credit, so sometimes they organize job fairs. They're really sad events with loads of employers there that nobody really wants to work for. But I went on one occasion to speak to some Bath Spa reps, Bath Spa University, because I was thinking about going back into education and reskilling. And they were doing, well, they were advertising about this course. It's Clickstart. It's funded by the Institute of Coding, and it's in partnership with British Computer Society and Catch-22. It's a 12-week course. It fit in with the bar work, but it also gave a kind of rough overview introduction to all the different fields that I could potentially specialize in, like web dev, UX, UI, and digital marketing. This course wasn't like the course of all courses, but it did give me access to mentors at the end, and also a year's membership with British Computer Society. British Computer Society do a mentorship scheme for their members, which I thought might be useful. So I, after scrolling through pages and pages of male mentors, I found Kim. Kim's really cool, and she agreed to be my mentor. She answered a lot of questions about that I had about the tech industry and about changing careers. And she also mentioned to go to something called codebar, which I'd never heard of before, but I went the following week to a codebar event in Bristol and met a really cool human called Fran. This is Fran. And I also met another really cool human, and their name is Leo. This is Leo. After the event, we went for a drink, and and we stayed in contact after. About a month or so later, Leo mentioned that their friend was hiring for a tech company at a company called Interrobang. I went on the website and was really, really intimidated, but also really inspired. I spent 3 days obsessing over my application, and I got an interview, which I naturally over-prepared for, and here we are. So that was, thanks guys. Yeah, so that was it. I did a course. The course gave me access to a mentor. The mentor said, go to a place. I went to a place. I met a Leo. The Leo said they had a friend. I contacted said friend, got an interview, got a job. And to be honest, I thought that would be it. I thought that's the end, great job, go home and have a cup of tea. But it turns out that was outrageously the start of a whole new journey, which is equally, I defy you stars, which is equally really hard and really difficult, but also very rewarding and satisfying.